Hello and welcome to the Wisden World Cup Daily Podcast. Afghanistan's semi-final prospects are still very much alive as they put in a superb display over Sri Lanka, beating them by 7 wickets and 28 balls remaining. Sri Lanka couldn't really build on their good start. 134 for 2 became 241 all out, losing their last 8 wickets for just 107 runs. The target was 242 and it was one that Afghanistan hauled in with relative comfort. I'm Yas Rana, and with me today is our resident Afghanistan expert, Cam Ponsonby. Cam, this is Afghanistan's 3rd win of the tournament, and I was struck by how uneventful it was. No frills. Rashid Khan in his 100th ODI was fine, but didn't do anything spectacular. Nabi had a quiet game, as did Gurbaz, but they still got the job done with relative ease.
Yeah, I think it's kind of been the win that their coach, Jonathan Trott in particular, has just been kind of calling out for, like crying out for even. Like, we always think about smaller cricketing nations having like exceptionally talented individuals and how they almost need those people to stand up and have like the tournaments or matches of their lives. Whereas this is the second match in a row where they've just won. Jonathan Trott has spoken about in a batting perspective. He's said, look, we have 6 hitters, but we need to get better at just turn over the strikes. And we had that amazing footage of their board that I think I'm sure we'll talk about it later. Of like, how are we going to chase down 240? It's like, we're going to be at 50 after 10. We're going to be at 100 after 20, 150 after 30, and so on and so forth. And just breaking it down to be as simple as that. It reminded me of when, I think it was when Paul Ince was manager of Blackburn or something, and someone zoomed in on his notes and he'd drawn a little like box and just said shoot, basically. It's like sometimes the simplest plans are the best. And it means that they're in for a shout of qualification now. We still need loads of things to kind of go together. So the permutations, it hurts my brain, but if Afghanistan keep winning, then we're with a shot.
That was a great moment where they showed that whiteboard, because I thought it was reassuringly straightforward. It was sort of mocked on social media, but this is a side that rarely has to score that much more than 280 odd. And it makes such a difference if they can get scores of between 240 and 280 consistently, because that's not something they've done a huge amount of in the past. So, the reason why they aren't doing even better in the tournament is that they had a stinker with the bat against Bangladesh. We were talking before we started recording is some people, there's been a lot of debate about how much have Afghanistan's results actually been upsets. Well, one, they only play 3 games against a side ranked in the top 6 in the last 4 years. So many of their players, not even so many, some of their players have got very good T20 records, but haven't done that much in ODIs. And if they have, they're not against elite teams. You just had the Asia Cup gone by where they finished bottom out of the teams that ended up going to the World Cup. So this isn't a side with loads of ODI success behind it. It was by no means a formality that they would get 2 wins, let alone 3, even 1 win after what happened in 2019. And I think Trott should actually get quite a lot of credit for turning this into a unit that has consistently got decent scores at the back, because some of the players are new in Ramanullah and Zadran, but also Rahmat Shah's been around for years, middling ODI record. Hashmatullah has been around for years, middling ODI record. Azmatullah has barely played international cricket. So this isn't exactly a side who've done this in the past.
I think it's interesting in that it's kind of an appointment and a method of success that's kind of at odds with the modern game. We're so used to hearing people about kind of, we want to raise our ceiling, we want to have the best potential, like we're going to play volatile cricket and we're going to get 250 in 20 overs, and if we get bowled out for 90, who cares? It doesn't matter. Whereas Jonathan Trott seems to be, his focus has been, can we lift Afghanistan's floor, basically? Because I remember we sat here after the New Zealand game, and it was so frustrating. It was like a cliches cricket thing where Afghanistan fielded like absolute morons. They were bad. It was a bad cricket performance. And today they were rocket hot. Like, there was an amazing moment where in the space of, I think it was 2 balls or 2 minutes or whatever it was, the ball went out into the covers, the throw comes in, direct hit, it then trickles away for an overthrow. The throw then goes in for the other end, it's another direct hit. So we've had 2 throws, 2 direct hits. And then it was when I think Sri Lanka was 6 down. I can't remember which batter. It drops it into the offside. I think it was Chamira.
It was Chamira, because that was really bad cricket, because it was the last ball over. Chamira's batting with Matthews and he's trying to pinch the strike,
get back on strike.
Yeah.
He's a thinker.
And then, but it was the third direct hit
in a row. And just kind of just seeing that in terms of how much that's changed and how different a performance it was. Because against New Zealand, they were throwing catches on the floor. It was like embarrassing. And we'd had that video of Trott and Afghanistan talking in the changing room after the England win, where the fielding was very obviously a thing, like that they were joking about. They were joking about happily because they'd won, but it was an issue that everyone knew about. And today they were so tight. It was such a kind of clean and effective and kind of like wiped down surface performance where it's like, right, cool, we've played you, we're better than you, let's win, on to the next one.
Thomas, how much credit should we give Trot for seemingly bringing this calm and maturity to the Afghanistan side, especially the new generation of players like Ikram, Azmat and Ibrahim?
I think, at risk of kind of repeating myself, I guess we're talking here about a player who was famed for being boring, basically, and I'm kind of being deliberately cruel there. And when you think about if could you imagine a world where Jonathan Trott is announced as England white ball coach with the background of the last 8 years we've had? Like, no, you can't, because it's kind of like, well, hang on, like, could you launch it out of the ground? No, you couldn't. But it has really helped them from a batting perspective. I know you've said this before, like, kind of Afghanistan's middle order has been perceived to be potentially like the weakest in the competition. Basically, like, this is where they're weak. They have a great spin unit. They've got a couple of lads who can whack it, but can they churn out runs, basically? And now we're in a situation where 6 games into their World Cup campaign, their entire top 6 has made a half century. I thought that might have been an impressive stat, and then I clicked on Sri Lanka's batting stats, and they've done the exact same thing. Nevertheless,
but you're less surprised about that with Sri Lanka than you are Afghanistan.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas there's just been a depth of performance. Whereas as we go back against like Rashid Khan's the obvious example, he's averaging like 37 with the ball in this competition. All their there's only one bowler for them who's averaging less than 30. And that's Noor Ahmed, and he only played 1 match. Like, this is a team that has just collectively, within the group, performs at a level to be competing for a World Cup semi-final spot. It's not been the case that Gurbaz has hit 500 runs at a strike of 150 and Rashid Khan's ripped through teams. Like, this has been a very kind of overall team performance that's got them this far.
Fazal Haq Faruqi was very good today. It was amazing that Afghanistan actually dropped their player of the match from the last game, Noor Ahmad, in the side for 1 game, out the next, having done very well. And Fazal Haq Faruqi, who was left out of that Pakistan game, comes in, takes 4 for 34. And I've just found it quite interesting all tournament how Afghanistan have done very well with the ball, with, as you say, without necessarily individuals having spectacular performances. So far this tournament, the scores against Afghanistan are New Zealand 288, Pakistan 282, India 273 off 35 overs, okay, Sri Lanka 241, England 215, and then even in the game that Afghanistan lost to Bangladesh were only on 154 after 35 overs. There are very few bowling attacks as good and as diverse as them in the tournament. Mark Nicholas on commentary was talking about a conversation he had with Atherton, where Atherton said, has there ever been a bowling attack with 4 spinners as different as theirs in the same team as they had against Pakistan?
It's a good character witness.
I also think as well, it's really interesting how teams just seem to consistently go quite slowly against them. This is like they don't feel like they're able to take risks against sort of anyone other than the new ball guys.
I think, and this potentially plays into what we're talking about Sri Lanka, is that the criticism of Sri Lanka was, they kind of didn't show enough intent. They didn't really go anywhere. I was like, that didn't quite sit right with me, because they were 130 for 2 off 27. Like that, for the sake of argument, that means you're going at 5s and you get to 150 for 2 after 30. You go, all right, we're going to get 300 and win the game, basically. And it was a case of what you're saying there is there's no real let up. If you've got a bowling unit there that all performs their jobs, it's like, where's our obvious kind of risk-taking opportunity? And even though you've got all these players who aren't actually ripping through sides, people have the delivery in them. Mujibur Rahman's ball to get, I think it was Samar Wickrama today, it was absolute seed. Like, it's spanning so viciously. And I remember watching they do that little replay, and you see like the close-up of the hand, and I was like, I don't know how, is it triple jointed? Is he quadruple? Like, how does he manage to get that many revolutions on the ball? And so from that point onwards, you're getting into a middle order on the Sri Lanka side, where, and this is kind of hindsight speaking, they've had a lot of kind of disruptions to their team and guys coming in and out of the side. And it's like, okay, we need you to go at 6s and 7s now against lads kind of spinning it both ways. And it's very, very difficult. And as a result, Afghanistan bowled fantastically well and bowled them out for, what was it, 242, which is a score I feel like I've seen scored about 1 million times in this World Cup. Feels about right.
Yeah. It feels like it was about 10 years ago now, but there was that relative controversy after their first game where Rashid Khan was brought on really late.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Trott said, well, that's not a directive that's come from me. But, you know, when it works well and the other guys bowl well, suddenly, if you're only going at 5s and even if you've only lost a couple of wickets, suddenly it's really quite hard to attack the back end of the innings when you've got Rashid Khan coming on, and he's going to bowl about a third of the last 20 overs.
I guess there's a difference in dynamic between 20 and 50 over cricket, because it's almost seen like a signal of strength if you're playing against Rashid Khan in 20 over cricket, where it's like, right, we want to hold him off for as long as possible, because if you don't get ahead of the game now, we've got this trump card to come and play, basically. And so it becomes an advantage. Like if you've got an ace up your sleeve, you want to be able to hold it for as long as possible and kind of win it where it matters. In 50 over cricket, when kind of Afghanistan had started like slightly worse or whatever, it seemed bizarre. It was like, surely you want to control more of the game immediately, and kind of that literal time is like, oh, he's not on at the moment. It's been an hour and a half. We haven't seen Rashid Khan bowl. But I do think it's hard, because like we were just talking there, we were just praising Afghanistan for like bringing Faruqi back in and having dropped Noor Ahmad and being like, oh God, that's such kind of clarity of thought process. And it seems like it's almost quite a set plan. It's like, right, venue dependent, this is what we're going to do. But then against New Zealand, when they opted to bowl first, despite having like beaten England in the way that they win games and they did because of the dew factor, that's also a clarity of thought process, but it's just potentially just wrong. We were very clear, but we were very wrong in our decision making. I guess that again harks back to kind of the Jonathan Trott influence, or that coaching group influence, where they go, right, this is how we're going to go about and winning our games, even if the captain and the coach might not be on the same page with Rashid all the time.
Yeah, and oddly, there's one of my favourite cricketers this tournament has been Azmatullah. I reckon he's probably the only player out of the 150 in the 10 World Cup squads who I think I'd literally never heard of him before the tournament.
That's allowed.
He's done really well. I know he's going, I think, at about sevens with the ball, but he's got a couple of half centuries now, and he has been providing semi-regular breakthroughs, and he sort of provides the job that Hardik Pandya does for India. And I think he's actually really important for this Afghanistan side, because again, a decent seam bowling all-rounder has not been something they've had in previous tournaments.
Azmatullah is Hardik Pandya. You're hearing it more and more. There's I don't know, honestly, I do want to say there's literally a cricket info article at the moment being like, Azmatullah, is he Afghanistan's Hardik Pandya?
Is there really?
Yeah, and
I genuinely didn't know that.
There we go.
Anyway.
Well, I'm not accusing you of anything. But no, it's been remarkable, and you've got to also put his innings today in the context of, we still don't know if Ikram was going to bat. Ikram, the wicketkeeper, broke his finger in the first innings. So yes, you can go, okay, they need 110 with 7 wickets in hand. They should do that. But actually, for all we know, they're actually 4 wickets down, and so the pressure of that really kind of goes up. And this is a guy who, I love it when this stuff happens. Like, he scores an innocuous single to take him on to 66 today. And the comms go, he goes, it's his highest ever ODI score. You're like, what? He doesn't have like a wealth of runs behind him or anything. He's got he's only got 2 ODI half centuries. They've both come in this World Cup, but he's only played, I think he's still in the single figures in terms of appearances. But he has all of a sudden become such a kind of valuable player, because if you're going to bat in top 6 and send down some seamers, that makes you so valuable to kind of whichever team you're on. I think my one criticism in terms of a game-specific thing, just where Azmatullah's life was made a bit easier, not to take away from his innings as a whole, was that wicket fell. I think it was Rahmat Shah got out, having been dropped 1 ball, caught the next, and it's like, right, here we go. This is where the game needs to change. And Sri Lanka kept on Dhananjaya de Silva, and Azmatullah was able to literally prod his way to, I think he was 11 off 18, and that was fine. That was no problem at all for the game, for the game situation.
They were still in touch with the board.
Exactly. They were still going along. Jonathan was still happy. The run rate wasn't becoming too much. And I remember thinking, that is such a piss easy way to start your innings in a high pressure situation. You've got Shamira bowling gas. You've got Madhushank. You've got Tikshana, who I just watch him and think that. There are lots of bowlers I think this, but I think about him the most. You'd get me out every ball. Just like he bowls it 63 miles an hour at the stumps and goes each way. There are wicket-taking options in that side. And so, what I'm saying is I also would have scored 70 off 60 to win Afghanistan the game today.
Well, that's it for part 1. In part 2, we'll talk about my moment of the match and look forward to tomorrow's game. My moment of the game is when Ian Smith shamelessly stole our mate Nick Friend from the Cricketer, his viral tweet from the England game, where he said that England were the 43rd nation that Nami had beaten in international cricket. Well, firstly, it was my moment because I thought Nick deserved a shout out here, because that's not a stat that's been dug out elsewhere, and also the tweet went so viral, it's impossible for someone to have independently have come up with that since Nick's tweet. And then second was hearing Mark Nicholas' total shock at some of the nations that Naby had beaten, your Bhutans, for example.
Bhutans.
And at one point, when Smith told him that Maldives were one of the 43, he said, wow, why bother playing cricket when you've got beautiful archipelagos like that? Which was not a sentence that I thought would be uttered at the start of the day. Briefly on Sri Lanka, you talked about their approach to the bat and how Kusal Mendes potentially didn't seize the moment when they picked up a couple of wickets. Pretty frustrating game for them because they do have a very talented top 6, top 7. I know they've been unlucky with injuries. Kumara was ruled out of this game. Chamira came back in. He's barely played cricket recently. But it has just been quite a frustrating campaign for them. And Kusal Mendes, actually, on an individual level, he started the World Cup so well.
Yeah.
He became captain halfway through the tournament. He's now been out in exactly the same way 4 innings in a row, playing a slog sweep. And also, you saw a change sort of in how they may be looking to approach things in dropping Kusal Perera and bringing in Dimuth Karunaratne, who's a very different type of opener. It sort of feels like a campaign that's petering out.
This loss is so frustrating for Sri Lanka because they started poorly. They were not 0-3. Then they got their 2 wins on the board, and all of a sudden, because they hadn't lost in that dramatic fashions, they batted well. Their net run rate was fine, and you go, right, okay, beat Afghanistan, take your medicine against India next week, whatever. No one's going to beat them ever for the rest of time. Win against Bangladesh, and all of a sudden you're 4-4, and it was basically a shootout against New Zealand. Like, there was a very formulaic way you could get to the end of Sri Lanka's campaign, and you could see they'd sneak into 4th place. And yeah, they've jibbed it basically. Like, they've lost a game which was a hard-fought contest, and they've just come out second out of 2, basically, very comfortably. I think in terms of the batting unit displayed today, I thought it was a great example, and we're all guilty of this, but I thought it was a great example of punditry by hindsight in terms of the criticism of Sri Lanka's innings has uniformly been they didn't show enough intent. Kusal Mendes gets out slog sweeping, and they're like, you can't play that shot. No way. And it's like, well, he's trying to bomb it over mid wicket. Like, you can't have it both ways, where you can't go for the boundaries and then criticize when people kind of take their kind of foot off the gas. I think Sri Lanka, this is effectively the game that defines their tournament, because and now they're now they're part of the Champions Trophy kind of Europa Conference League part of the World Cup, as opposed to kind of the Champions League top 4 scenario. Whereas had they won it, they would have lived another two matches at least, because against India it's a free hit.
That's a good point actually on their fixture list compared to Afghanistan, because the winner of today, someone would have ended whatever happened today. Someone would have left today having won 3 matches from the first 6. But Sri Lanka's path to the semi-final, had they won, would have been simpler than Afghanistan's.
Yes, absolutely.
Because of, as you say, the net run rate and the fixture list. It was interesting that I saw that Angelo Matthews less effective with the ball today than he was last week against England. In terms of permutations now, Afghanistan are in 5th place with 3 wins. Every side has now played 6 games. Australia and New Zealand are immediately above them in the table with 1 more win each, but with vastly superior net run rate. So really, we need Afghanistan to continue this run and one of Australia or New Zealand to get stuck. I would say at this point in time, it's probably more likely that New Zealand do that than Australia. Afghanistan have Netherlands next. New Zealand have South Africa next. So there's every chance that by the weekend, they're actually level on points, having played the same number of games. New Zealand also have Pakistan, and as Cam mentioned, they also have Sri Lanka. Afghanistan finished with 2 tough games against Australia and South Africa. But you'd say about South Africa that the one time they've come up unstuck this tournament was against a spin-heavy side in a run chase. And we know that however good they have batted, they are also a vulnerable-ish side in that you've got Marco Jansen at 7 and a long tail.
How good it would be if South Africa won the World Cup, having lost 2 matches in the whole competition to the Netherlands and Afghanistan. That'd be wicked. I think we've got an opportunity for some kind of like artificial tension at the moment with Afghanistan potentially not potentially, they will play the Netherlands next round. There's like explosions happening outside at the moment. I'm quite distracted.
We hope they're fireworks.
Yeah, fine. It's fine. With Afghanistan taking on the Netherlands next, you'd kind of, That's just going to be a very good match, basically. I was going to say Afghanistan favourites, and I don't know if I actually really mean that, but it does give the opportunity for the competition to get further into the group stage with there still a number of kind of permutations around. The one thing I find with all the permutations we're always talking about, they're almost always, if this team win all their matches and the other team lose all their matches,
then it might
change. And it's like with New Zealand, I've realised that I think I was actually listening to the Wisdom Daily podcast a couple of days ago, and you were mentioning how England's route to the semi-finals does involve like New Zealand being the team that kind of drops away and effectively wins 4 and then loses 5. So not to sound too despondent, but I'm being despondent.
Yeah, I think it'd be very 2023 World Cup if Netherlands beat Afghanistan, where you actually get a good result, but it makes the tournament worse. We waited so long for good games, and then the second good game actively made the tournament quite a lot worse in terms of interest.
Well, it was those 2 games. It was New Zealand beating Australia, and we kind of needed Australia to win for the sake of the competition.
So we needed New Zealand to win, so Australia would have had three wins from 6.
That's what I meant. And the same with when South Africa were playing Pakistan. You're kind of like, wow, those are 2 great games. Oh no!
And Netherlands beating Afghanistan would be brilliant. Netherlands getting to 3 wins from 7 would be an amazing story. But it makes the tournament quite a lot worse. Makes that last week a lot worse.
Don't do it. Roll over.
Anyway, tomorrow we've got Bangladesh, Pakistan. Pakistan really need to win all 3 games to even have a chance of qualification, really. Bangladesh, crucially though, as Shakib Al Hassan reminded the world yesterday, are playing for Champions Trophy.
Incredible.
Qualification. Pakistan in a bit of turmoil though. So today, Inzamam resigned as selector amid allegations of having a conflict of interest. He's allegedly got a stake in a player management company.
Yeah.
Pakistan are almost having an England level tournament, but it's not yet over for them.
But it's just imploded so quickly. I feel like I kind of blinked, and I was like, I can remember like 7 days ago being like, Pakistan might win this thing, and they've lost 4 matches in the row. So basically, their equivalent of Luke Wright to England, not quite. 'Cause Luke Wright's not chief selector. Luke Wright allegedly is like the agent of Joss Butler. Yeah. Is that what we're going for here, basically?
Pretty much.
Okay.
It'd be like,
doesn't sound brilliant.
Yeah.
But and then there's
allegations that then influences his selection over players who are not Joss Butler.
Correct. And then we add into this, we've had Baba Azam. He had like WhatsApped a journalist, or the journalist WhatsApped him. He'd replied, and then they've just taken a screenshot of that and stuck it on national telly. Which again, sorry, Joss Butler's getting drugged through the mud here, but it's basically it's like Dean Wilson from the Mirror messages Joss Butler. They just screenshot it and stick it on then like Sky Sports News, basically. So it all sounds like a very kind of normal things happening there, and they might lose to Bangladesh tomorrow to make it all worse.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got that to look forward to. Cam, thanks for your time. We'll be back tomorrow for our weekly episode, as well as our reaction to Bangladesh, Pakistan.